These are 10 essential rules for dyspraxia. As someone with dyspraxia myself, I have a deep emotional connection to this issue. If you're struggling, this video can truly make a difference. Now remember, this is education mixed with entertainment. So with that being said, let's analyze this train of thought accordingly. The 10 rules for dyspraxia, which was basically, it's self-explanatory really. It is something I wrote to help empower people that have dyspraxia. So let's just start from the beginning. So my name is Nathan, and I have a social enterprise called Neuroexpression, which is to empower and help neurodivergent people. In particular, it does facilitations and exhibitions, but that's just a little bit about myself. So I'm neurodivergent, and I just wanted to create a PDF that was free and that would help people. And as I have dyspraxia, I'm diagnosed with dyspraxia, I thought this could be particularly helpful. So I thought, let's just go over this. Okay. So the rule number 1, so I'm going to explain each rule and hopefully give some context. So rule number 1 is be a student. So the concept of the student consists of 2 elements. So the first element is that they are humble, and the second element is that they are learning. So being humble is about not feeling more important than others, and learning obviously is important for developing awareness. So I would say an example of being humble, let's say, is treating people with respect and not disrespecting people. And learning takes place in a variety of ways. You can learn through books, you can learn through the internet, you can learn through listening to other people. There's various ways that we can learn. So here we, again, a crucial part of learning is understanding other people, and a way of understanding people is asking questions. That's a very good point. What do I say? If I was talking to Einstein and I wanted to know about the theory of relativity, I would ask the question, tell me about the theory of relativity. Yeah, asking questions is really good. Say if I meet someone and they're really good at business, or they have a great business background, I might ask them a question like, tell me about your business, or tell me in your opinion what's the best way to sell a service or product. And this can contribute, or it will contribute, to your learning. So we have the student perspective is the best way to maximize learning, because we are always learning. So I guess here it's, think of yourself when you go into an environment, you're asking yourself the question, or you're entering with the perspective that you are the student. So you're not the teacher, you're the student. And the reason for that isn't to undermine yourself, is to actually always increase your likelihood for learning. So if you're coming in as a teacher, you're like, I am teaching you. But if you're coming in as the student, that means that you are learning. And it's always important to continue to learn. So questions to consider in the dyspraxia context, we can ask ourselves the following question. What is dyspraxia? That's a good question to ask if you have dyspraxia. What are the solutions for managing dyspraxia effectively? Again, that's a good question. And are there dyspraxia communities that I can access? So to me, a community is like a group of people, which could be physical or digital. So, a digital community like a Facebook community, that to me is still a community. Reddit community, that's a community, hence a digital community. And then meeting up with like-minded people is a community. Say if you're training and you go to meet some people to go running with, that's, you're part of the running community. And I think that being part of communities can be good for our mental health. So let's go on to rule number 2. And this is social intelligence. So in this context, social intelligence is the ability to interact effectively with human beings. Social intelligence is the way to tell stories. It's the way to talk to people, how we manage small talk. Okay, so social intelligence is important. Why is social intelligence important? Well, within the work context, most of us, we socialize with other human beings, and it takes social intelligence to have effective interactions with other human beings. If you work in departments, or if you work in the context of like you're a seller, you're selling a product, social intelligence is even more important. You can argue that some people buy the product not just because the product is good, but because they like the person. Now, ideally, you would want both. It's a great product and you like the person that's selling it. And social intelligence works well in relationships, whether friendships, romantic relationships, etc. What's the next bit? So here we got like a little flow chart. So we have smile, paraphrase, paraphrase what the other person's saying, have empathy, learn how to tell a story, and listen. Listening is so important. So many people just do not listen. So to me, I like to use the analogy of the yellow and blue mask. The yellow mask is the relationship with my friends, and the blue mask is my relationship with my work colleagues and associates. By making this distinction, I can create the appropriate communication style for each relationship. So I guess this is predicated on the fact here, I can't even remember writing that, but that's based on the different relationships that we have, and it's just a visual metaphor. So the blue mask is the relationship with the work colleagues, and the yellow mask is the relationship with close friends and family. And clearly we probably should have different communication styles for that. So for example, if a work associate asks me, how am I? My response to that might be different to if my mother asks me, how am I? And there's various reasons for that. So for example, let's say if I'm feeling really low, if an associate asks me, how are you doing today? It may be socially inappropriate for me to share that information with that person. But if a close friend asks me, it would probably be appropriate, or it could be appropriate, or it could be an opportunity for me to share those real feelings. So understanding social, it's important to recognize that part of human evolution is effective social intelligence. From the jungle as Homo sapiens to the modern world of capitalism, social intelligence has always been important. So indeed, from my understanding, if you look at the evolution of the Homo sapien when we were in the jungle, communication was effective. There was a few things that were effective. Let's see if I can remember this. I think the first one, well, not the first one, but one of the things that were effective was our ability to be innovators by creating stone tools. The other one was the ability to cook food, and some people believe that by cooking food, this increased the size of our brains, I believe. I could be wrong. But the other part of our effective navigation within the jungle was not only understanding the jungle or understanding the physical parameters, it was also the ability to collaborate effectively in hunting. And we were able to do this in a variety of ways, but one of the ways was using language effectively, or having an effective language system. So you can argue then that there's social intelligence being used, because if I'm in the jungle, I need to get on with all these other people to enable us to hunt effectively. So that, I guess, was the reasoning behind that. And obviously in a capitalist society, if you're running a successful business, or if you're trying to run a business, you need to get on with colleagues. You may need to liaise with other, I'm assuming they wouldn't be competitors, but you may need to liaise with other organizations to do brand deals, etc., etc. The notion here is that even in the jungle of capitalism, you still need to socialize effectively with other people. Now, of course, there's other stuff that comes with that. In the jungle of capitalism, you need to sell an effective service and an effective product. But social intelligence, in many instances, is an important part of moving forward. So rule number 3, read effectively. So the premise here is that reading is essential. You may agree or disagree with that premise. If you agree with that premise, then the definition in this context is gathering information. So this is important. So reading here is gathering information. So when we're talking about reading, this could be getting information from documentaries, podcasts, or any type of visual entity that has information. Maybe to elaborate on that, any type of visual information that is important. So reading is important in the dyspraxia context. It's important because it is acquiring knowledge while understanding learning styles. The premise here is that neurodivergent learners are primarily visual learners. So if you have dyspraxia, you may be a visual learner. So it's important to read effectively, i.e., it's important to find different ways of absorbing important information. So here's questions to consider. Why is it important to know your reading style to read effectively? How can reading more positively affect your life? So let's go to number 4. So number 4 is the social model. So the social model says that people are disabled by barriers in society, not by their impairments or difference. Not by their impairment or difference. So society could disable you due to how they being society, perceive dyspraxia as opposed to the dyspraxia itself. So there are 4 barriers to the social model. So we've got people's attitude, the way institutions function, the physical environment, and social discrimination. So I have dyspraxia. Let's say if I'm working with John's attitude towards dyspraxia may be the problem as opposed to my dyspraxia. So his perception is the issue. An institution, if there's an institutional perspective that neurodivergent people are ineffective, then that's an institutional function that is the problem. So there's the social model is kind of showing how it isn't the disability is the issue, it's the environment that is the issue, or things within the environment, whether it's institutions or people. So a work performance issue may be seen as a product of my disability, but it could be a product of lack of reasonable adjustments. So what questions are to consider? Why is the social model relevant to dyspraxia? That's a good question. What is the best way to describe the social model? That's another good question. And what are the solutions to overcome the barriers of the social model? So rule 5 is community. So as human beings, the premise here is that we're looking for connections, and people connect over various things. Obviously, chess, people connect with other chess lovers. Book lovers connect with other book lovers. I personally like chess. I like to play chess. So I'm part of a community where I play against other people. I'm not particularly good, but it's nice to connect with other people and play against other people. Again, I like boxing. So again, I go on the internet and I watch the reaction videos as well as the boxing videos. And you can go deeper into that. There's within chess, boxing, or books, there will be dedicated communities where you can actually interact with other people, share opinions, have disagreements, but you have that commonality. So communities are around because communities are strong. So that's the premise. The reason why communities have been here for hundreds of years is because they are strong. And the question is, what society is without a community? The better question might be, can you show me an effective society without a strong community? So you can join a community to add value to your life, and consistently we're always looking to add value. So for example, when you buy a product, or when I buy a product, I'm looking for a product to add value to my life. Alternatively, you can create your own community. This is hard, but there could be greater rewards, but it's a more of a time investment. Everything's an investment, but it's more of a time investment. And it's important to realize that communities can be in person, but they can also be digital. So the rule 6 is training. So as dyspraxia is primarily a coordination issue, it's logical to assume that physical exercise could be very important. Remember, at its core, dyspraxia affects coordination, and this is regarding the hands, fingers, and full body. Yes, I read an article on a PT that worked with people with dyspraxia. It seems like he developed a protocol to help with fine motor and gross motor coordination issues. He has an anecdote of a young woman with dyspraxia trying to carry an art portfolio because of its heavy weight. After training, she was able to carry the art portfolio and focus on doing well in college. So basically, the premise here was that this art student that had dyspraxia had this massive art portfolio. As someone who did a master's in moving image, I can kind of visualize this. So you got this portfolio which is really heavy, and she had dyspraxia, which is a coordination issue, and she was struggling to carry the art portfolio, which means that her focus was on the art portfolio, and it was this, this is something she's doing every day. But after they did a sequence of exercises or went through a particular protocol, she then carried it with ease, which meant that she could focus entirely on her studies and didn't have to have that anxiety of thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to uni today, or I'm going to college today, and I've got to carry this massive art portfolio. So the questions are to consider is, does training improve your mental health? How do we train effectively in a dyspraxia context? And what is the relationship between training and memory? I think it's important to recognize that there's a question. If you have dyspraxia and if you're training, would your training be the same as someone who is neurotypical? And I think there's an argument to make that neurodivergent training or training within a dyspraxia context may be very different to a neurotypical person training. You might have to do different exercises, or you might struggle with certain exercises. Remember, the fine motor skills are your fingers and your hands. If you're doing weight training, what are you using? You're using your full body, but you're using your hands to grip things. So you may have to make certain adaptations and be solution focused. And clearly, I believe that the literature states that training, and it's important to define what training is, doing running, fast walking, or even just regular walking or working out in the gym. There's a correlation between training and positive mental health. Let's move on to rule number 7, which is reasonable adjustments. So to understand reasonable adjustments, we need to understand the following criteria. So you have the Equality Act, which protects certain characteristics, and those characteristics are protected by reasonable adjustments. So disability is one of the characteristics that is protected. And you may think that dyspraxia is not a disability, and here's the important distinction. Dyspraxia is a disability under the legal context, and therefore it is protected by the Equality Act. That's a very important point. So in my job, I have reasonable adjustments of a job coach, and he provides services that remove the barriers of my disability, or that's his purpose. Maybe in another video I might give some more context and talk about that in depth. So here's some questions to consider with regards to this rule. Do you have reasonable adjustments in your job? This is assuming that you're neurodivergent. Do you need access to reasonable adjustments in your job? Again, assuming that you're neurodivergent or you have a characteristic that is protected under the Equality Act. And do you need access to reasonable adjustments in your university experience? Again, this is the premise that's assumed here is that you have a protected characteristic under the Equality Act. So rule number 8 is clean your room, which cleans your mind. So the premise to this is the idea that a clean room equals better mental health. So a clean room can help with processing, organization, and structure, and these things are associated with dyspraxia. So if dyspraxia is associated with disorganization, having a clean room, or endearing to have a clean room, to have some type of structure to help with that, would help with the lack of organization. And this is why that we should invest time as neurotypical people, but also as people that are neurodivergent, to clean our rooms, because it will help clean our minds. So, and this again can be part of habit forming, and the premise here is that habits are essential for productivity. Yes, so there we go. What's the next slide? So our real habits reflect what is really behind the curtains. Our room can define the state of our well-being. So I guess the notion here is that our habits define who we truly are. Because some of us, we tell people who we are, but our habits, i.e. what we do behind the curtain, which is figurative language, really define who we are. And then the next line refers to your room, whether it being tidy or whether it being messy, could be a reflection of where you are at mentally in terms of your well-being. So someone who's feeling stressed and anxious and is all over the place, they're more likely to have an unclean room or an untidy room. But someone who is at peace and is structured and has good habits, they're more likely to have a tidy room and a calmer mindset. So questions to consider: what is the relationship between mental health and a clean room? Is that premise correct? Why is it important to have mental health? Why is it important to have positive mental health? And is there a relationship between a clean room and peace? So rule number 9 is be solution focused. So being solution focused to me is a mindset. So it's a way of navigating the jungle of life. Again, we're using figurative language, and this jungle has barriers. So capitalism, people with negative masks, institutional barriers. Let's explain that. So obviously in capitalism, we're either working for a company or we're selling a product or a service. So within capitalism, generally speaking, unless you have generational wealth, you need to work to be able to navigate. And when you have issues such as we have now as inflation, that jungle becomes harder, or that jungle becomes more intense, or the lion or the enemy becomes more intense. And people with negative masks is I guess a metaphor to illustrate that they're going to be people that you meet that might project one thing, but deep down there might be something else going on. They might be what we'd call Machiavellian. And then institutional barriers are the barriers that we face from institution. This could be discrimination. This could be a whole array of things. So a solution-focused person that starts a business, so we're going to look at being solution-focused within a business context, has a great mindset for the difficult task of entrepreneurship, which is exceedingly difficult. The solution-focused person understands about resources, collaboration, and building accordingly. The solution-focused person with dyspraxia looks to maximize their strengths and improve their weaknesses. In the solution-focused mindset, he sees problems as the door to success. So the solution-focused mindset draws parallels to the growth mindset. The growth mindset encapsulates ideas like mistakes help me learn, not lean, learn, and be inspired by other people's mistakes. So going back to the business idea, the solution-focused person will look at a business or a product or a service and they'll think, how can I promote this product so that I can ensure that people are aware of it and that they can purchase it? A problem-focused person would not even think of it like that. They'll be like, well, I've got a product, but I can't sell it. Where the solution-focused person would adopt the attitude, well, I have a product, I need to invest time and maybe some financial resources into marketing to ensure that people know about the product and they know what problem that they solve. And remember, being solution focused isn't just about solving problems within business, it's solving problems within every area of your life. So I'm trying to think, it could be solving, you might have a close friendship that's deteriorating and you think to yourself as a solution focused person, how can I resolve these issues? Do we need to have a conversation? Have I made a mistake? Do I need to apologize about something? When we think about being solution focused, we're naturally guided towards the solution, where a problem focused person might be like, well, it's their problem. It's just their problem and it's not my problem. So being solution focused, the idea to me about being solution focused is being optimal. Is you're being the best version of yourself. That's probably the best way that I can put it. And you can contrast it. You can look at any situation, apply a problem-focused attitude, then apply a solution-focused attitude, and then ask yourself the question, which one is more effective? So here's some questions to consider. Write down reasons how a solution-focused approach could improve your life. Ask yourself, what is the growth mindset and why is it relevant? And then you can ask yourself, why is a problem-focused negative mindset so detrimental? Okay, I actually don't have the 10th rule written down, or I don't have it on this slide, but the 10th rule was understanding dyspraxia from your personal context. So understanding dyspraxia in your personal context. So what does that mean? So let me break down what it means for me. So with regards to barriers, dyspraxia affected me in the following ways. It meant I had a bad memory. I had a significantly bad memory. Now the problem is when you have a bad memory, you don't know you have a bad memory. So it's really difficult to identify that, because if you don't remember, you don't remember. But these were one of the barriers that I had. The second thing I had was very poor organization. And the third thing I had was because dyspraxia affects fine motor skills, it affected my ability to be able to drive. And also I had poor coordination. So this also affected my ability to drive. So this would be understanding dyspraxia in my personal context. So what I would say is understand dyspraxia in your personal context and then apply that other rule, that the rule number 9, with being solution focused. So when you're looking at the barriers, identify the potential solutions. So there's various things you can do to improve your memory, whether it's exercise. I believe exercise can help with memory, whether it's improving your diet, or whether it's adopting strategies, etc. And, with regards to poor organization, there's things that you can do to help with poor organization. I personally use daily planners to help with poor organization. And, with regards to the driving issue, this affected my ability to get employment. But because I was aware of the Equality Act and reasonable adjustments, I was able to access funding to help with that. So within my situation, within my employment situation, I would have a job coach, not just for the driving, but that would be one of the services that they would offer, because obviously my disability presented barriers in me trying to achieve that. Now, the other thing I want to emphasize is that I'm talking about understanding dyspraxia within your context, and I'm listing barriers. Of course, being neurodivergent isn't just associated with having barriers. There are also associate strengths. So I want to clarify that, it's not, I'm not saying that if you're neurodivergent, it's all negative. However, what I am saying is that understand that if you have dyspraxia, understand what does that mean specifically to you, and then look at the weaknesses, apply the solution-focused ethos, and also embrace your strengths. So to me, these 10 rules can be really efficient in enabling you to be the best version of yourself. So that was the 10 rules that I wrote for dyspraxia, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.